Gosh, I love military geopolitics, history, and geography. In 1946, after the Second World War, which never ended, the US Navy and the Allies sent a fleet to Antarctica, Operation High Jump, Jump High, and discovered portions of the ice wall, marking the outer borders of the dome, electric magnetic ether. In 1955, almost 10 years later, Operation Deep Freeze discovered the actual domed wall. The domed wall. We are inside a dome, which the domed wall is behind the ice wall. And if you see the encyclopedia in the 1950s, they speak about this, and that was removed after the 1950s from the encyclopedias. Discovering with Operation Deep Freeze the domed wall, which is just behind the ice wall. Then NASA was founded in 1958, 3 years later after they discovered in Operation Deep Freeze the dome wall. They created NASA in 1958 to cover up the nature of the world, of the Earth, of what we call the sky and dome. The dome, when NASA was founded in 1958, the dome was called the Van Allen's Belt. The Van Allen's Belt, which was defined as a barrier of dangerous radiation that's supposedly difficult, impossible to traverse. Then, 1 year later, after NASA was founded in 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was signed. Look, this is important. The events of the 20th century, they mark our grandparents' and parents' lives, and of course mine as well. In 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was signed, effectively banning anyone like you and me from exploring the area out of free will. Why? Of course, why? Because you're not allowed to see it. And then Operation Fishbowl came 3 years later in 1962. Fishbowl was an attempt to nuke the firmament with bombs. Boom! And the name Fishbowl, I mean, it's fishbowl. They could have named it anything else. It's fishbowl. It booms like a fishbowl. So, and then afterwards, in 1969, of course, the Apollo lunar missions to the moon. The Apollo moon missions, which was an attempt to create an alternate cosmology. But I guess they didn't think about the fact that everybody would notice that everything is faked. Now, also, haven't you noticed, and people don't speak about this, we've never returned to the moon since. All these interviews saying, no, we would like to go back to the moon, but it's impossible. We haven't populated Mars either. And the airplanes that could travel above orbit that have been promised, if you check the history, they were promised to us since the 1960s, airplanes who could travel above orbit. We don't have any. NASA even said in 2015 that it's impossible for us to leave low Earth orbit. And also, the whole dome and firmament would be easy to dismiss if regular tourists like you and me could start all of a sudden colonizing the space, moon, Mars, and flying space. But nothing happened. Everything is still in movies and studio movies and sci-fi and all that stuff. Do you get the point? Now, let's speak more about Operation Fishbowl. Detonating several high-altitude nuclear bombs. Why would you want to send nuclear bombs, which are like the more powerful than what happened in Hiroshima, or the same size as the explosion in Tunguska, Siberia, fake Tartaria, Russia? Why do you want to send those bombs in the sky? To attempt to break the dome to see if anything happens, and of course nothing happened. The bombs just got obliterated, but it's insane because nobody who in their right mind would want to detonate nuclear bombs in high altitude or like massive destruction bombs. No, if you would say let's vote for this, I would say no, I don't want to vote for this. I vote against it. Okay. Now anyway, of course we have to speak also about the linguistics and the language. Language is very important, of course, the ancient languages, the old world languages, because our modern languages, they don't just come from nowhere. Now let's look at linguistics. We get the word firm, F-I-R-M, from firmament, which means to hold or firmly support. Do you see the importance of the firmament above Earth? To hold or firmly support. And also it means sky. In its fixed form, firm means sky. This is according to the etymology dictionary. There's a dictionary called the etymology dictionary. You see, grammar. Grammar is also a science. Now, The sky does not look solid unless it's made of a transparent material, and unless it just looks like transparent, right? So it can be perfectly fine as electromagnetic force field energy. Like even if you read the verse in Job chapter 38 verse 17 in the book of Job, it says, "Has though with him spread out the sky, which is strong and as a molten looking glass." It doesn't say it is made of glass. It says it looks like a molten looking glass, okay? Which means transparent and of course force field. Now, the Hebrew word for firmament is rakia. R-A-Q-I-A, rakia, which means vault of the sky in Hebrew and also means floor of the earth. The similar word raka means expanse or spread out in Hebrew. There's also a word in Syriacic from the ancient Syria, which is raka, which means to make solid. They say that this word is possibly the origin of the word rock. Now, there's a related Indo-European word, which is der, D-H-E-R, der, which is said to be the root for the words firm, firmament, fixed, affirm, confirm, dharma. As you can see, terra firma, farm, infirm. You see, everything has the same root. And also the word farm in this case, the word farm. Huh? How do you feel when you say, hey, human farm? Hey, no, I'm not going to go there. Anyway, we grow plants and trees and animals in farms, we as human beings, so we can also be a farming project. We were created by the creator as a genetic experiment. Now, everybody knows that the dome is real, so because the dome is real, we live here like in a greenhouse because we have greenhouses like domes where we grow animals and plants and stuff. So therefore the creator or the creators, they cultivate life forms under the dome. Remember, there was a time when the ancient giant trees made of silicon, and silicon is not compatible with our carbon water life form. I know this is too much for you. I don't care if you get depressed. I just care about the reality of the real world. Now, there's also the word dom, D-O-M, the word dom, which is also tucked into the word kingdom. Kingdom. What does kingdom means? Kingdom. Well, the king is the ruler of the dome. That's what kingdom means. That we say the kingdom of God or the creator or Jesus. Kingdom. The king is the ruler of the dome and whatever is under the dome. Just like the word domain, D-O-M-A-N, domain. Domain refers to an area governed by a ruler. So everything which is under the dome is the domain and is governed by a ruler. And the word freedom, if you separate, it's free and dom, freedom, which means that human beings like you and me are free, but only within the confines of the dome. Do you understand? Freedom. Yes, you are free, but within the confines of the dome. English is very important as a language, and what came after before that. A dome is defined as a round, vaulted roof or a hemispherical covering of a building. In Old France, a dome was also a townhouse, and the Greek word doma and the Russian dom. So in Greek we have doma, and in Russian we have dom, which simply means house. Do you understand? The house of humanity. The German dom, in German we have the word dom, and in Italian we have duomo, which means God's house, or the house of the creator, of what we call as the God. And also they're the words used for cathedrals in Italian. And in Sanskrit, the ancient Sanskrit, which we have the Vedas, we have the word for house, which is damach. You see? Dom, dam, damach. And we also have related words which are domestic, domestic, dominate, domicile, as in your home, your house, domicile, and dominion. Everything is with dome. To have dominion means to own sovereignty or control. So the sovereign of what's under the dome. And all of this is fairly interesting in the sense of purely linguistics and languages. And also, language tells us that the ancients, the people who use these ancient languages with these words, they understood the control, the rulership, and even the throne of the creator of what's inside this dome. And according to the dictionary of ancient German, very important, the ancient German language, there's a word in ancient German which is Himmel, and the word Himmel, Himil, in ancient German means heaven, kingdom of God or kingdom of the creator, arch, roof, ceiling, ether. It even means ether. What is the dome made of if not ether, electromagnetic force field? And again, we are life inside a dome, and therefore people don't like this because they go crazy, they go depressed mode. Of course, many of the typical science and stuff we have from the 20th century. Remember, everything happened after the Second World War, so we are very new, very primitive. But everything that was built after the Second World War in terms of science and stuff in space and all these many billion-dollar industries and all that stuff that we've been told would crumble to pieces to nothing. And many of the believers, it doesn't matter if it's the Hindu religion, the Buddhist religion, the Christian religion, the Jewish religion, or the Muslim religion, we call them systems of belief. Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim, many have decided to believe the NASA model. Even though the belief systems and all of these belief systems, they respect the dome and us as life form experiments under the dome. But many of the believers in all these belief systems do not want to accept what's written in the text. So people, the big majority, would go super crazy mode to accept the reality of the real world and military geopolitics, that we are a life form under a dome. And there's more to this. See you in the next video.